It's crazy what they get away with in the cosmetic space. I was buying a new moisturizer a couple weeks ago and I looked and it had said clinically validated. And then I looked a bit deeper and it was 15 people wearing the moisturizer for 1 hour. And then they were taking the results from that to be gospel and clinically validated.
Hey, Karl, what's up?
Hey, Erum, how's your week going?
It's going really well. It's event season here in New York. Well, it's always an event season in New York because New York is a happening place that never sleeps. But specifically in the biotech world, we went to a couple events. Yesterday, we were at the Indie Bio Grand Opening, which is an accelerator program that funds biotech companies across the board, the ones that are in biopharma and ones that are in synthetic biology. And it was awesome. How'd you like it?
I thought it was great. This space that Indie Bio opened is near Penn Station in a neighborhood that has seen a lot of new buildings, a lot of revitalization over the years. The Indie Bio location is in the heart of New York City, easy to get to, fascinating space. There's like 300 people there. You had representatives from the city and the state. When the state put out a RFP for biotech, Indie Bio, who traditionally had been in Ireland and in San Francisco, applied and they ended up getting some grant money for that. It's really going to be very exciting to have them here. They actually launched Indie Bio New York at the height of the pandemic. They located the class at Rockefeller University on the Upper East Side and did most of it virtually. And since they launched, that was in 2020, they've had 5 classes go through the program in New York. And the number of new companies and the amount of funding that those companies have generated and the employment that those companies have generated was mentioned last night. And it was stunning. It was just jaw-dropping because they barely started. The money that has poured into those companies is amazing. So it's going to be a huge economic driver for the state of New York and biotech in general.
I really appreciated the remarks by Sean O'Sullivan, who heads up SOSV. He really painted a very interesting picture about planetary health, human health, and how there's only like 2 billion people on the planet, and it kind of stabilized until there was the discovery of like petrochemicals to run machinery and create fertilizers, and all this food became available. And of course, there's also the alleviation of some diseases, and then the population grew and grew. And now we have a whole different set of problems. Petrochemicals were helpful. They're awesome back in the day, and they helped create the planet that we're in, they helped increase our population. But now it's causing all these issues with the climate, and now we need to look for different solutions, and we've got to turn to different tools. I mean, biotech is one. There's lots of different tools. It was really great. We have a really amazing venture capitalist, VC, that we are interviewing today. Her name's Shelby Newsad. How did you meet Shelby, Karl?
I met Shelby because she had done a biotech meetup on Twitter that she was doing in New York City. It was interesting to me and ended up going to that event and spoke to her and liked what she was trying to do. The two of us have been part of another community and have organized communities. And we think that it's important to be parts of communities, and we are parts of many communities. That's how I met Shelby. And then I liked the group and ended up offering her the opportunity to use the messaging lab space for another group. And then we subsequently have gotten to know each other. So we did organize an event together, and we're talking about organizing other events together in the future. Shelby's very interesting. She's got an interesting background. She's trained as a plant, I want to say geneticist, but I'm probably wrong. And now she's working as a venture capitalist at Compound VC. She's only been in New York City for 6 months, so that gives her a very interesting perspective on biotech in New York City. We should just let Shelby talk for herself.
Yeah, let's get this party going.
Hey, Shelby, welcome to Grow Everything.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Erum and I were really excited to have you come on board as I'm going to say, a new representative of the New York biotech scene. And we're excited to have this conversation with you.
Yeah, likewise. You guys have been very welcoming in the biotech community in New York and have really helped make it feel more like home. So yeah, just really glad to have an excuse to speak more with you guys.
So why don't we just kick it off by asking you, how do you talk about biotechnology to people who don't know anything about it? What do you tell people when they ask you, what do you do? And what is biotechnology?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm of two minds about what I tell people. I have really in-depth conversations very quickly with people already in the biotechnology industry. For people that don't know, I normally have more of a pharma, curing disease, curing cancer spin on things. And it's only really with writing that I've engaged with the bioeconomy aspect of growing medicines, growing fabric that make textiles, and growing soap. It's harder for it to sink in when you're just saying that to people. We have bacteria that can make spider silk, and for them to see it written, I feel like that's been a more digestible way. So I have tried to talk to my parents more about the bioeconomy, and for them, I can just see their eyes glazing over as soon as I say something like that. But I did send them an article that I wrote, and it seemed like they really got it. It's like people being interested and engaging with biotechnology with different formats really helps in the understanding. So listening to podcasts such as yours that talk about it from many different angles, and then having it be a steady part of what they're reading really helps. So the blog post I have is called Bioscene Thought, because that's where aspirationally we'll be in the Bioscene. Right now we're in the Anthropocene, to where everything we see, inhale, ingest is like made with humans, and then the ultimate heating of the earth is caused by humans. But in the biotechnology, in the Bioscene sphere, hopefully everything we see will be like buildings made from plants or made from mushrooms, and our food being much more naturally sourced. And as same with the textiles that we have, those not being derived from petrochemical plastics, but maybe bioplastics instead. That's hopefully what we're going towards.
And I think that you're in a very challenging position because you are a scientist by training. You're also a VC by training. You're in these worlds where it is very niche and you have a lot of technical knowledge, and you have to translate on both sides, on the enterprise side and on the science side. So you're speaking two different languages. You started your career, your education in the sciences, and then you made a transition to the world of venture capital. I mean, we all know about Shark Tank, and that has become very popular. So now the world of VCs has become a little bit more mainstream. And so you are a shark in the biotech space. So what inspired you to become VC?
My love of research and new science became really evident through 10 years of higher education, 10 full years that I did enjoy, but I just had so much resistance at the end of my PhD to pipetting anymore. Like I just couldn't do anymore, like pipetting clear liquids in tiny tubes and then heating those tubes up and cooling them down. And I couldn't imagine that being the rest of my life. But what I really enjoyed, especially with writing up my thesis, is engaging with all of the surrounding literature and the new trends. And I was really grateful to be able to work with a couple UK-based funds during my PhD to help orient in the biotech scene, both on the synthetic biology side and the more traditional therapeutics. It just became an easy decision that I felt where my interests in bringing research ideas together and reading papers made the most sense. And especially that's why I was really jazzed to join Compound, which is a research and thesis-driven fund. And that being at its core resonated with me and how I like to engage with the biotech ecosystem.
One of the things that Rum and I talk about is we're constantly feeding our curiosity. And I often say the thing I love about the work that we do is constantly having to learn about new technologies, new companies, engaging with people that are building these things and talking about them and helping them. We joke around that we are endlessly curious. You sound the same. And being part of this feeds that. And then also knowing that there is like this greater impact that we potentially are making that is incredibly important right now.
Yeah. And I hear you on the lab life. That was me. I was in pharma. I was a chemist. I felt like an automaton. I'm like, this can all be automated. Like, what am I doing here? You know, don't get me wrong. The lab was exciting. But for me, after a certain amount of time, like you, Shelby, it was like, okay, it's time to see what's going on in the bigger picture. As when you do experiments, it's very narrow.
Yeah.
And there's a whole ecosystem to be built. And you specifically being in your shoes in venture capital, you have to see a lot of companies, right? Shark Tank, they're just being pitched nonstop. So sort of people coming to you, but you also have to go seek out these companies. Want to share some of the interesting things that you're seeing out there?
I'm really amazed by the breadth of companies that are being formed and all of the different challenges they're addressing, whether it's hormone monitoring for women experiencing perimenopause, like very early, or I was speaking to a company today that helps with new types of veterinary drugs based on cannabinoids to using cutting edge human therapeutic, but using them in plants instead. So Oworth Bio uses new age therapeutic called Protac that selectively degrade certain proteins. They use that in plants instead for disease and pest resistance. So
interesting.
There's a real richness to the diversity of issues being solved. And it's really such a privilege to interact with all of these different folks every day that have that broader vision to help and make a change.
Yeah, the Protac space, we know it well because the Protac space, which is a protein degradation, we'll end up defining it, space, has been very well funded. So it's very interesting to think about it being used beyond human therapeutics. But the evolution of that has been the molecular glue space, which is still considered to be very niche and new. And yet that has also seen a lot of investment. To our listeners, we at Messaging Lab are always trading notes with our friends on the investor side because we're all seeing different things. Sometimes we see the same things. And I think that's what makes it exciting to constantly have these dialogues. Proteins are naturally degraded by cells in nature. And usually what happens is there's a special molecule that is attached to them that marks those proteins for degradation, meaning that a normal protein isn't going to be degraded, but once it gets this mini protein attached to it, then it will be degraded by a cell. And you have to think of it as kind of being like a trash mechanism. Certain proteins end up being not useful anymore. And so the cell degrades them and maybe turns them into new proteins or just eliminates them altogether. This has been of great interest to drug developers because there is the possibility of degrading proteins that are not healthy by attaching certain molecules to them and then marking them for degradation. So when Shelby says Protacs, she's talking about this field of study to develop medicines that are based on this concept of degrading proteins. On the other hand, molecular glues are a type of molecule that encourages two proteins to come together that normally wouldn't interact. This is a little bit of a newer area for drug discovery. It's probably been around less than 5 years, but it has attracted a fair amount of interest from investors. And these molecular glues are used to bring different proteins together and could be used potentially as medicines.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree. Molecular glues in a way to modularize and engineer the continuous discovery of new ones is something that I've seen several early stage companies trying to solve, and really hopeful because just the smaller size make the cell membrane permeability much better and the oral availability much better as well.
Generally, people don't know how challenging drug discovery is. And then these things like that Shelby mentioned about membrane permeability, getting the drug to the target is a very challenging, I don't know, can we just say area of study, area of research, area of investment, area of company formation. Drug delivery is a big thing. It's so fascinating, endlessly fascinating. There's so much going on in all those spaces.
What are you looking for right now? What are some of the technologies besides therapeutics? Because we're going to go deep into that later. A lot of what we've been discussing is synthetic biology because of our thesis, our focus here at Grow Everything is you can grow different products that we use every single day. Is there anything that you're looking for specifically?
I'm really bullish on companies that enable condition optimization during the fermentation process and companies that modularize or digitize the CDMO process as well.
Shelby mentioned CDMO, and a CDMO is a contract development and manufacturing organization. A lot of biotechnology companies use contract manufacturers or contract development manufacturer organizations to scale up the production of their molecule. You might remember a couple of episodes ago, Shara Tiku of C16 Biosciences mentioned using contract manufacturers to manufacture their palm oil alternative. And so that's an example of a company using a CDMO or CMO to augment their capabilities.
Just the general scale up mechanic. There are very few companies actually there that are enabling the synthetic biology transformation, but all of these early, like pre-seed, seed stage companies that are focused on maybe one or two products that are very technically very sound on those products, but don't necessarily have the scale up expertise, are going to need enabling companies in order to achieve high scale and eventually market success. So right now, more looking at the infrastructure and enablement side of synthetic biology. What about you guys? Where are you seeing the most excitement?
Mist or mystic? Yeah, when we talk to people and they bring us a technology that we haven't heard about, it's always something that I always reflect on it and I'm like, wow, that's very clever, or that's really interesting. I tend to fall in love with the technologies and the companies and the people behind them very easily. I'm very excited about the kind of tools being developed for using not model organisms, uncharacterized microbes, underutilized. I'm very excited about that. Non-fermentation biomanufacturing is very exciting. And we're seeing some very interesting things in that space, not just cell-free, but the use of different organisms that normally wouldn't be used. And then consumer applications. Our friends at K18 Hair, they're the number one selling hair product in Sephora. And they're very biotech forward. We say that they're a biotech company disguised as a hair care company. And I'm excited to see more of those. And what about you, Erum?
The consumer biotech is something that's very exciting because it's putting biotech in the hands of people, especially if you market it that way, right? Biotech is in the hands of everyone, but they just don't realize it. It's in their bodies because the COVID vaccine was developed in that way. And of course, the biomaterials. So we had Polybion on here, making leather out of agricultural waste. It just checks off so many boxes. And I think those stories start inspiring people and getting them to understand, okay, there's this technology, there's this tool that can be used to create different things. I don't have to just use just chemistry. This is something using biology is more green, it's a little bit more interesting. There's also some challenges and risks. We talked to Megan Palmer, she pointed those out. You have to have a nice release plan if you're making some type of organism that goes out into the world. But I do think that the consumer biotech and the stories, what you need to hear from the companies that you're seeing, what Karl and I do every day is just try to get them out there, get them in the mainstream, because we need more talent, right? These companies need people with all different talent to join them. And if people don't know that they exist, they'll never go and apply.
Yeah.
Just the consumer biotech is going to be helpful in that regard.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel that's really something I missed in the things that I'm very bullish on, because I absolutely agree. And at the networking event we were at earlier this month, I tried Z-Biotics, and it really did stop me from feeling effects of the alcohol itself. And I can just see things like that seeping into everyday life. And it's amazing they've got things like that to a semi-affordable scale, but it's interesting the different pricing structure you can have if it is like a bio commodity, that people will pay more for something that really works, that isn't just snake oil. That aspect, it's been a middle zone between a pure commodity and a kind of a drug in a way. And that allows for a lot of pricing power.
Yeah. And you're right. Like, it's also functionality, like it works, right? You have to think about the biology of you as a human and how these products interact with their biology, and it has to work, right? Where chemistry is sometimes a shot in the dark. And I don't want to be negative towards chemistry. I have a degree in forensic chemistry. I love chemistry, but there's always been a battle. Like, even when I was in college, the biology department and chemistry department, we'd always have competitions, play flag football. But anyway, we have a friend who has a lotion for the skin microbiome. And that's something that's really interesting. I don't know if you've seen anything in that space, but because a lot of people have used antibacterial, and I have, and my skin's also very dry. And she talks about the rewilding of skin and like how your skin has different ecosystems, like your face and your arms. And so they have different needs. When you're talking about like microbiome, it starts getting real for people, because it's like, yes, I have that issue. It makes sense to me that there's a biological solution for that. So curious if you've seen like anything in the personal care space that excites you besides K18, of course.
Yeah, I've heard whispers of phages being used to treat acne in the care space, which is interesting.
Shelby mentioned phages. Phages are viruses that infect and replicate within bacteria, and they can be modified to target and kill bacteria. So this is great for applications like antibacterial or killing whatever bacteria is causing your acne.
I love the face lotion idea, the microbiome lotion. That's really powerful because so many of us, myself included, I've had acne problems, it seems like my whole life. So I've been aggressively using alcohol on my face, and I'm sure killing all the positive and negative bacteria. That's really nice. But there's hope that one day it can maybe be rewilded with with only good bacteria. And then like directly controlled with phages as well. And I've heard whispers of like phages for deodorant as well to get rid of the smell causing bacteria, and more natural hair colors.
Can we talk about that? Because we talked about hair a couple times. Yeah. What have you seen? You have some inside intel on that.
Yeah, a friend that I have from Cambridge in the UK, Nina Warner is her name, and she was always very entrepreneurial and ran the Entrepreneurship Society at Cambridge and started a company that's looking at safer ways to do hair coloring. I'm really bullish and still providing the same experience to customers while also being at price parity or hopefully slightly higher. That's been the traditional challenge for a lot of companies, but the fact that she's so laser focused on par quality and customer experience, as well as the health angle, just really gives me hope that we can keep exposing our bodies to products that are better for us.
Yeah, I had a great conversation with Nina a couple of months ago. So thanks for the introduction. And I'm looking forward to following up with her because I was so fascinated and inspired by the approach she was taking toward coloring hair. And just on this whole note of the consumer biotech, as we are speaking now in late January, there was just an NBC News story. I don't know if you saw it, Shelby, that was about Archaea, which is a personal care product company that was spun out of Ginkgo Bioworks. And it's a really nice story. I will link to it in the show notes. I put it in my LinkedIn and Twitter feeds. The woman who interviews Jasmina, the CEO, who we have invited to be on the podcast, is going to be on this season, does a really good job. And then she goes back in the studio and has like samples of the perfume that was made from an extinct flower from Hawaii, which is also fascinating. So really nice story. We'll make sure we link to it so that people can see it. Just switching the subject a little bit, let's kind of circle back to New York City and how you ended up here, Shelby. And you said that you were happy to find a nice biotech ecosystem. How long have you been here and what's been your impression so far?
Yeah, I've been in New York for 6 months now. I moved right after finishing my PhD, and it's been really refreshing how open and curious people are in this ecosystem to meet others, because New York has just, a lot of people moved out for the pandemic, and then summer last year is when a lot of people started to move back to New York City, but a lot of the people that moved back are biotech people. So it's great for us. And yeah, from the SynBio side to the therapeutic side to all the new lab spaces that are in New York, it's just a wonderful community. And not to mention, in terms of lab space, cheaper than Boston and the Bay Area. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope to do more events with you guys at the Messaging Lab and more events with the broader community too.
Yeah, because you've organized some biotech meetups, which is how we met. What are those called so that people know, and how are those received?
Yeah, they're called Bio Meetups is good. I called them Bio Hangouts, but the first month I was here, I just wanted to meet other like-minded folks. And so I put out a tweet, and I would have been happy if 4 or 5 people wanted to meet up and just say hello and talk about what we were working on. But 30 people ended up showing up. And since then, there's been a cadence of events, one of them being at the Messaging Labs office. So thank you for that. and a pretty good return rate of people that have come before. So it really feels like a community, and the breadth of people that come to the events, people from the longevity space to public biopharma companies to equity research to investors. The breadth is really informational and fun as well.
That's great. We love having events with you. It's really good to just let loose. It isn't very formal, which I like, because you just are trying to make friends. You never know when you need them for any like intel. This is a big picture question. If I were to give you $10 million right now, what would you do with that money in terms, would you start a company? Would you invest in other companies? What would you do?
Great question. The partner of Compound has asked me this a couple times as well.
Nice.
So you've practiced this question.
Yeah, I feel like I'm never quite in the state of mind to give it an answer that it deserves. But maybe not investing in a company or starting a company, but just investing in better R&D in scale-up processes and trialing different forms of microbial cultivation, different non-model organisms, like you're talking about, Karl, different medias, and trying to find a way to streamline and automate that process.
Non-model organisms refers to organisms, particularly microorganisms, that haven't been used by the research community for study for historic reasons, probably because they're harder to culture. So the most used organisms in biotechnology are E. coli, which is a gut bacteria, and yeast, which you may know is used for the production of beer and yogurt and a lot of other things. But however, those are two microorganisms, and there are potentially trillions of microorganisms on the planet. It just happens that those are the most extensively studied and the most used in industry. The use and study of non-model organisms for biotech purposes is a fascinating field. And we're going to have someone from a company called Cultivarium come on to speak to us about the need for more non-model organisms.
I don't know, 10 million is probably not enough to do that effectively, but maybe it could be an inroad. And maybe it's not the final scale up that a company does, but the 0 to 0.5 scale up that a company does, just to see. I feel like a lot of companies fail in that phase, even more than what scale in the 0.5 to 1 phase. So them getting to even 0.5, facilitating that would create a lot of value.
Okay, fine. I'll give you 250 million. Is that enough?
Okay. Yeah, that would do a good bit. What would you guys spend it on?
10 million. See you later. I'm moving to Panama. No, Erum, you answer while about it a little bit.
I'm very entrepreneurial. I had started a company before in the digital health space. I'm seeing all these things that are going on in the synthetic biology space. So I would do like half start the company, and I have a long list of companies that I would probably start. I mean, everything from like a drink with a very unique flavor profiles. It's like very efficient to make. I actually spoke with a brewer today, and he said that they use genetically engineered microbes to get more fruity flavor out of the yeast and to use less hops in the process of making really high quality beer. So it saves them a lot of money, and it gives them more control over the flavor profile. And I was like, oh, that's interesting that you can do that. So I like the idea of making a product. Like my past company was software, so it's a little bit more not in the hands of people. So do 5 million to start something there. Probably have to raise more capital, but 5 million is enough to get some proof points out in that space. And then 5 million, I'd probably invest in a complementary company to the company that I start. So being able, to be able to work together and scale up. So half invest, half use to start a company, because it is fun if you have the right idea, the right team of people, because you just think about it, you think about the future, and just keep going and building, make mistakes. I've done it one time. I made a lot of mistakes, but I have learned from those. I'll probably make some more. And Karl and I, we always like, let's get a business started. Again, because we see opportunities too. I'm sure you see the gap. Like that's why you had that. You need more R&D. You need to be able to get these proof of concepts from the lab to scale up. So you see that big gap, and that's where you're spending money.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it that way, Erum, because initially I was going to say I'd go 50% consumer biotech help consumer companies get their products. But I would actually shift it. I will take like a safe bet with you, Shelby. A third would go towards helping people scale, because I think we're going to overcome it. There is a biomanufacturing shortage. So I think that there's a lot to be done on the biomanufacturing side. But I also do believe that on the biomanufacturing side, there's too many people focused on fermentation, and fermentation only can do certain things. There's other ways that we can produce natural and biotech products that do not involve fermentation. So I would take a third there, take a third and go deep into personal care. And it's not even that much, that's $3 million. And then the other third, I'm feeling like with Erum, you're talking about like a beverage or something like that, that I find that would be on the consumer side as well. Maybe I would go 70% consumer biotech and 30% scale up tools.
Yeah. Okay. I know we're dreaming a lot here, but this is something that's been on my mind, is the idea of engineering food to be medicine. It is medicine, like food is medicine, of course, if you're eating the right foods, but maybe something a little bit more like specific if you have a specific disease state or ailment, and you can have a drink rather than taking a pill. Because I feel like I just hate taking pills, and I used to have a huge problem. Like my dad would have to like crush it in a drink. And there's of course helping alleviate disease, but then there's also, okay, can we step up? Like how can we get some superpowers from some of these drinks now?
Right. I love that too, Erum, but the only problem with like functional drinks is then you have to go through an FDA process, and that's going to eat up a lot more than $10 million.
We'll have to raise more money. Is Compound looking for any investments in the drink space?
Yeah, unfortunately. The other thing that we don't talk about, but I'm endlessly fascinated by, is dual use technologies. So technologies that are maybe developed using biotech in the third world that are location specific. Maybe developing world isn't the right way to put it. But what's going to be interesting is watching very specific technologies develop in locations that would have never been developed in New York, something that was developed in Maine, or maybe something is developed like in, I don't know, Lawrence, Kansas, that someone in New York would have never thought of, or someone, I'll say in Panama or in India or someplace that is so specific to the location and just makes so much sense for that location. And then how do you dual use it into the developed world or for other uses? Like that, being a scout for that kind of stuff and paying attention to it is going to be really interesting to see how things develop over the next 10 or 20 years, because a lot of those technologies will be developed.
Absolutely. You can get CRISPR kits shipped to your home now. And so the biohacker communities are some of the biggest people on, at least that I see on Twitter. Yeah, 100% agree that the biohacking and the deglobalization of it, that the needs of someone in New York aren't necessarily the needs of someone in Colombia or in Dubai. So yeah, in that case, maybe it's the CRISPR kits themselves instead of the specific products that would be interesting and create value there. But regardless, I'm really excited for that. And I think iGym has made some moves to make it a broader suite of teams for the West Asia, South Asia, Africa. And I'm really glad that they're looking outside of North America and Europe for new ideas.
Agreed.
You said biohacking, and that is going to be one of the episodes we'll have. So we are starting this culture club, Shelby. I don't know if we mentioned this to you.
I want to join.
Yes. It's not a Boy George fan club, but ultimately it's just, us reading or watching or seeing things that are happening in biotech or in business, and just being able to talk about it. On the docket right now is a docuseries on Netflix called Unnatural Selection. And they do talk about the biohacking community. They talk about drug pricing and gene drives.
Yeah, I'm just always fascinated by the things you're seeing and your takes on commodity biology, and that being the next big thing. I'm just curious, have you seen, in terms of the industry, how long have you been bullish on commodity biology, and where is it now as opposed to 5 years ago?
When you say commodity biology, unpack that for us.
Yeah, more of the consumer biology.
I feel like it's still relatively new, and it's not something that the public is that aware of. There is a lot of ingredients that are produced through fermentation. That's been something that's been going on for a long time. So a lot of cosmetic, personal care products, the ingredients are produced through fermentation, not necessarily with genetically modified organisms or genetic engineering, just straight up traditional fermentation. And let's just say over the last 10 years, this might not be accurate, we have seen more products that were previously available only through natural sources. I'm thinking of squalene specifically, but I know there's a lot of other ones. Squalene, which is a long carbon molecule that used to be extracted from sharks and is a great emollient that gets used in a lot of beauty products, is now overwhelmingly through fermentation and produced in yeast. So that's a big change. Like in the consumer or personal care products market, there is like this fascination with naturally sourced ingredients. And what that means for most people is, oh, they pulled it from a plant or they extracted it from a plant. And what I would say most people don't understand is there's not enough landmass on the planet to satisfy the needs of everyone wanting natural ingredients and feeding everyone. So being able to find the pathways and put those pathways into yeast or even plant cells and fermenting those or growing those in ways that you don't need the plant, we're going to see a lot more of that. But what's missing is we haven't had a lot of brands that are just very biotech forward, saying, this is the product of biotechnology, these are the benefits, and this is why we use biotechnology to develop this product.
Yeah, definitely. And it's crazy what they get away with in the cosmetic space. I was buying a new moisturizer a couple weeks ago, and I looked and it had said clinically validated. And then I looked a bit deeper, and it was 15 people wearing the moisturizer for 1 hour. And then they were taking the results from that to be gospel and clinically validated. And it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, people say that about the vitamin industry, but one of the things they say about the American consumer market is there's so many ingredients that they're just not allowed anywhere else in the world because people have proven they're generally safe. Those ingredients make their way into these products. And you can have a trial, if you want to call it that, of 15 people for an hour, and then you could say clinically validated, and buyer beware.
Yeah, it's really scary. That's the other space that I didn't mention I was interested in, but I am. It's the remediation space of all of these bad chemicals, and maybe it starts with the being able to test them all as well.
Yeah.
So that's something where there's new research coming out and higher regulation, and there could be some interesting companies built there.
Are you referring to like environmental remediation or?
Forever chemical remediation primarily, but I'm sure there's, like Karl said, so many more chemicals that we just don't know that they're toxic yet, but over the course of the next few years, we'll probably realize that they are, and being able to rapidly engineer microbes to get rid of those from our food and water systems is a really valuable application of biotechnology.
Have you met Nicole from Alonia?
I haven't. I have followed Alonia though.
Yeah. We'll have her on in the next couple of episodes. She'll dig into that a bit. So definitely listen, and we'll have her come down or we'll go up to Boston and see her.
Cool. Oh, that's exciting. That's really cool. Yeah. And girling over here.
Yeah. Definitely biotech nerds in that way. Thank you so much, Shelby. It's always great chatting with you. We'll talk to you again some more, of course. We'll plan some events. We'll have you back on. We always learn a lot speaking with you.
Yeah, I agree.
Likewise. It's just always great interacting with you guys. And I'm sure we'll see each other like in the next week. So
probably.
Yeah. Some New York bio event. So yeah, just really appreciate it again, guys.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Shelby. Wow, that was a great interview. Shelby is just so inspirational. It's so nice to talk to her. I always enjoy the conversations we have with her. I'm looking forward to seeing her in person very soon. What do you think, Erum? What was the highlight for you?
Well, Shelby's just super, super, super smart. And so I feel smart when I talk with her. I went to the University of Cambridge. That's one of the top schools in the world. She studied specifically Bioscience Enterprise. I didn't even know that was a possibility, but there is a program at University of Cambridge called Bioscience Enterprise. And so she has her master's in philosophy there. She studied plant science. I mean, I don't know how her brain survives. Like, she has so much information. And like, she works at Compound. They're so lucky to have her a part of their team. She's very thoughtful, as we all heard her talk about how she would deploy 100 million. She knew how much she needed to do what she wanted to do. So I had
10 million. 10 million.
Oh, 10 million.
Yeah.
So, and we needed to up the numbers. Like she was just like, okay, she did the calculation in her head on the spot. That's Shelby, right? She knows the numbers. She knows what can happen. And what's really great, and which is why Compound is so lucky to have her, is that she sees where the gaps are and she asks the right questions. And I love the fact that she kept wanting to bring it back to us. She's just kind of a joy to be around.
Yeah, we should have Shelby come back in a few months after we've done a few more episodes. In the meantime, I want to just thank our listeners. We are the fastest growing biotech podcasts in the universe. We do have a Patreon page. We have a couple people supporting us. So thank you to our supporters. If you have questions or ideas that you want us to talk about, please visit the Grow Everything page at Messaging Lab. All of the information is on there. Until next time, keep growing everything.
See you guys later. Have a good one.
Bye.